Hi guys, how's it going? I said gays, but that's all right. This is story time with Chris and Daniel, and I don't know why I'm doing the intro because Chris is the first name on the list. So clearly, I didn't get promoted, so I don't know why I'm doing this. But yeah.
Well, you told me earlier I couldn't overpower you.
That's true.
I figured the power dynamic was already shifting, and I was like, well, Daniel will probably do a better intro than me anyway.
That's fair. That's fair. So yeah, what are we talking about today, Chris?
So today I was thinking, I think it'd be really cool early in this show to get an episode in to talk about why we're even doing a podcast like this, and kind of talk about some of some of our first encounters and things with and experiences with stories in different mediums that even got us hooked on storytelling as a a medium or an art in the first place to want to do a show like this where we break down different movies, shows, books, and the like. So kind of just taking a trip down memory lane, and
I like that,
our childhoods, and we're going to go back to little Chris, little Daniel in elementary school and maybe even before, and talk about what made you love stories, Daniel.
Here's an interesting question that's completely unrelated.
Okay, perfect.
Do you think we would have been friends in elementary school?
I have to think so.
Really?
I have to think so.
How different? How much? What was different about you then than how you are now? Because I'm like way different.
I was actually probably more outgoing back then.
Oh,
like as I've gotten older, I became kind of more and more of a recluse.
Same here.
I'm what my mom calls a handsome little boy. I'm just kidding.
we all know you're not handsome.
No, we all know that.
That's not true. You're handsome, Chris.
We don't have to lie. I'm what my mom calls an introverted extrovert. I'm very, very quiet in a lot of settings, unless I'm like surrounded with family or close friends.
I'm the exact same way.
Yeah,
that's weird to hear you say that, because I was going to say the same thing when I was in elementary school. Not only was I more outgoing, I was a hyper. I mean,
yeah, me too.
You've seen me act hyper because I'm comfortable around you,
right.
But I'm not like that if I'm in a room full of people I don't know.
Right.
But like when I was little, it didn't matter who was in the room. I was like, I was a spaz.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were the same way?
I was the same way.
Wow.
I had no, I guess, fear.
Yeah.
I performed like some stuff in like elementary. So like I was in talent shows and stuff. And as you know, ever since you've known, I have like terrible stage fright.
Yeah.
But I like was doing talent shows and stuff, singing and doing comedy and stuff in front of people.
What?
Have I ever told you that?
No.
Yeah, I did like a little stand-up comedy routine for an elementary show.
I did the same thing. Look at that. But I stole all my material.
Really?
Yeah, it worked great.
Where'd you steal it from?
There's a
like you just heard jokes and were like, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, well, I didn't know there was a talent show. So here's what happened. I had no idea a talent show was coming up in the school. Like knowing me, they probably told me and I just didn't listen. But there's an announcement that came over the speaker. It was like, all right, for talent show auditions, move to the auditorium. And I was like, what? Talent show auditions? So the whole time people are going up and doing things. And I'm thinking, I didn't prepare for this. And you didn't have to audition, but I really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, man, well, a few nights ago, my dad this is back when Time Warner Cable, this guy named Dwight Slade. He's pretty funny. He put out a little special on Time Warner Cable that my dad was watching, and we were watching it together. So I just thought, I'm going to go do those jokes. This is where the only talent that was actually mine that came from this was I just have, if I like a movie or comedy or anything, I can retain everything that I've seen and like reenact it. So that was the only reason that this, like, you could give me any kind of credit for any of this, but I just 100% stole his routine. And the place was in tears. Like, I went on second to last, and
Dwight, your stuff killed.
He's really funny. You should look him up. But like I remember, like, I was the school hero for a long time. Like, for like 5 seconds. But but the night of the talent show, I think we still have the video of me doing it too. Like, there's this one. The first joke is something like, you ever get a gnat caught in the back of your throat, you're just like, no! Like just screaming. So I just 10-year-old kid just get up there and start doing that. Yeah, it's a good time. So did you write your own jokes?
Well, yeah, we I mean, so I guess ours was more like kind of like prop humor and a lot of like physical kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, we did know that it was a buddy of mine and me. We knew the auditions were coming up, but you know, like elementary school kids, we forgot and didn't plan anything. So the day of them, after school, we were standing in the hallway outside. They were holding auditions in the music classroom, and they were calling you in one at a time, or like, you know, your act. Like, so it was me and my buddy went in together, and she's like, so what do y'all want to do? And we were like, well, we want to do like two things, and we want to do like a song and some comedy. And she's like, okay, well, what song do you want to do? And I was really big into Elvis at the time.
Nice.
So I performed Hound Dog.
Nice.
While my buddy just like danced around me on the stage and made people laugh. And then from there, we went into like a couple little jokes. And one of them was he walked in like from out of, you know, like stage right or whatever. He walked on stage from off stage and was carrying like a giant stack of paper. That his mom, I know, it killed. They were like, oh, that is so much paper. His mom was really the hero of this because she provided all the props that we used. She, from her job, got like a huge stack of like that, like old timey like typewriter paper that it's all connected and perforated every so often, and it's got like all the holes on both sides. Huge stack of it. And he walks on stage, and the whole joke was, I just looked at him and said, "Hey man, where are you going with all that paper?" And he's like, "Oh, it's old. I'm throwing it all away." And I was like, "Man, you can't throw away all that paper. You got to recycle it. You think paper just grows on trees?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then we brought in a tree, like a fake tree and a little wicker thing that had paper taped all over it. And I was just kind of like dumbfounded, and that was the joke.
Wow. That's pretty clever. How old were you?
Like 8.
That's pretty funny.
Third grade. And then the other one was just, I don't know why I wanted a pie in my face. I just like, I was like, that's comedy.
Yeah.
And I was like, we have to find a way to do that. And what we came up with was, and we told all of this we had come up with these jokes on the spot in the hallway before we walked into the music room.
Oh, wow.
And so we were kind of like formulating it as we and we were all like giddy telling the music teacher. And I think I remember, like, you could see on her face, she was just like, none of this is going to happen. But it did. All of it did. Like I said, my buddy's mom was the hero. She made all of this happen. But the second joke was he came up and was like holding something behind his back. And he was like, "Hey, Chris, knock, knock." And I was like, "Who's there?" And he was like, "Pie on." And I was like, "Pie on who?" And he's like, "Pie on you." Wham! And like shoved just like a Cool Whip filled pie container in my face.
Well, that's less clever.
Yeah, it wasn't that funny. But people loved it because I got a pie in my face.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And you talk about the whole school. They clipped it. They recorded the talent show. They clipped that and my song. And they put it on the school news thing and played it as part of the thing for like the rest of that month or whatever.
That's awesome.
And I think I still have a VHS tape of that little act.
That's awesome.
I have to find it.
I got to see that.
I was going to say, so big picture. I'm kind of stepping out of my story time here to say, obviously, this is something we plan to do in perpetuity. And we'd like to grow it and continue to make it better for you guys, more enjoyable. And we want to bring you more content, unique content, different things. And I feel like this is a good time to throw in that as we start getting some consistent listeners, we would like to open a Patreon to start giving you guys exclusives. if I find the VHS tape of my 3rd grade talent show act, which I'm pretty sure I know exactly where it is, I will upload it to the Patreon in digital format so you guys can see that horrible stand-up routine and Elvis rendition.
That's a genius idea.
So there you go.
Maybe I should upload my comedy thing too.
Do you have it?
Yeah, we have it.
Oh yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
So there you go. So
what I need to do is find the actual comedian and give like the routine.
That would be hilarious. If we could interview him.
That would be
That would be
funny.
cool. I've never heard of him, so we'll have to do a little research to see if he's still doing.
He's
comedy.
really funny. He is. I've looked him up. He's got some funny stuff.
Very cool. But yeah, so that's all that to say. It sounds like we were very similar, not only in elementary school, but like even as we got older, how we morphed and changed.
It's really weird. The reason I asked that is because I was like, I feel like I was so much different that we wouldn't have been friends. The only difference that I really heard between us when you were telling me that story is you had friends and I didn't. You're like,
I had one.
Oh, well, that's one more than I had in elementary school. But you were talking about how like, we were planning together, we were laughing, and like I probably would have done the same thing if I had someone with me. But I was like, I got nobody. So, but then I was the hero after I did that. Plagiarism works, people.
It really does. Like if you like what we're saying, just take it. And do your own version of it. Let's
add a caveat to that because that could technically be used in court. So don't do that.
Obviously, that is a joke. What I said, not what his thing is real. Don't do it. But what I said is a joke.
We need a lawyer. What do we say now?
This podcast is sponsored by our lawyer. But yeah, no, that's really funny that we both did a talent show with some stand up in it and stuff. You grew up here, right? Like you've always lived in South Carolina. Okay. Where'd you go to school? What elementary school?
I was going to ask you the same thing.
I went to Red Bank.
Okay, I don't know where that. Yeah, it's in Lexington.
You've always lived in this area, though.
Yeah.
We live about an hour apart, so okay. But
our address is no.
Our address is. That's.
I went to Blaney Elementary for a little while, and then I went to Doby's Mill. Doby's Mill is where I did the talent show.
Okay. What grade?
I think it was 5th grade.
Oh, okay. So you're a little older than 5th. Me. Now, I will tell you this, a little behind the scenes of that day.
Oh, boy.
I almost didn't go. I almost left my buddy high and dry.
Like you got nervous?
Yeah.
Okay, so the stage fright's always been there.
Yeah, but...
Do you think because you had someone with you that
helped?
Yeah.
But it was also the fact that I was 8 and my mom was like, "You're going?" Because she knew about it. She knew... I think my buddy's mom was calling her and was "Hey, where are you guys at? Like, we're about to go on here." And we only lived like 3 minutes from the schools. I mean, it wasn't a huge, we made it in time, but I mean, like I got there, we got in the school cafeteria, and pretty much as my buddy and I walked up the thing, it was time for us to, like, we were next on deck. And that might be the last time I ever did anything like that. I mean,
good on your mom for making you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, it, she was like, "You started this, and you're gonna finish it." I was like, "Yeah, that's fair."
Can I tell you? I just now, because we're talking about comedy, this is actually I was planning on telling you these jokes, but I wasn't planning on this smooth of a transition. I made these really stupid knock jokes, and the last podcast I was telling you how the fact that you laugh so hard at my jokes cures my depression,
right?
And so I'd like to feel a little better about myself today.
Okay,
so
let's have at it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a mouthful of water.
Don't spit on that mic, please. Could you imagine what that sounds like? You just water gushing onto the mic from your spit take?
No.
All right, let me take a sip.
I could have known, but my headphones won't work in the splitter.
That's true. That's really sad. All right, you ready for these?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hit me.
All right, knock. Who's there?
Who?
Gross.
All right.
I knew you'd laugh at that one. I can't remember. Oh,
why? Because I'm so mature.
Yeah. I was just sitting around thinking of it, and then I told Claire. She actually laughed, so that was good. All right. Here's my next one. You ready?
Yeah.
See, I should have just done this for my talent show because I'm good at knock jokes apparently. All right, knock.
Who's there?
Hatch.
Hatch who?
Bless you. All right, now that we got that out of the way.
I thought you were going to say pie on. I'm like, no.
Oh, dude. Oh my gosh. Oh, we were looking up clean jokes the other day. There was one that we came across. It is so funny. It is so gross.
Oh God.
It's clean. It's not like inappropriate, but it just makes you like. It made me gag and laugh.
Yeah,
at the same
I don't
time.
know if I want to hear that one. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Okay. All right. I won't share it. It's really funny, but
maybe you could put that on the Patreon for you guys. I don't want to hear
for
it.
all the people who have twisted senses of humor.
Yeah, nah, I'm good on that one. You do. I will throw up.
All right. What are we doing now? You were saying something?
Stories.
All right, stories.
So, man, that would actually be an interesting story to tell sometime. As about because you were asking, do I think we would have been friends? How we met is an interesting story.
That's true.
Do you want to just get into it and kind of transition into stories? Or you want to do that another day? I don't know if it's a whole episode worth, but it is interesting.
Oh, you're saying do that story for a whole episode?
Yeah, like I don't know, but I don't know if
I don't think it'll be. I mean, if we were to go into details of how, like, I think we can say it really quick. I mean, basically, I was in a band with someone in high school, and we kind of I left the band at one point and we kind of went our separate ways. And then one of the guys, the guy who started the band and then brought me on as the lead singer, he reached out to you because to do hip hop or something like that.
Yeah, the girl he was dating at the time was someone I went to high school with, and I had posted a video of one of the songs I had done, and she saw it, and actually I think she was just listening to it out loud, and he was like, "Who is that?" And so she reached out to me and was like, "Hey, my boyfriend does like recording. It's like he really wants to do a song with you," and that's how I met him.
Okay, yeah. And then I was living in Texas when all that happened.
Right.
And then when I moved back here, I called him because I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel.
Right.
And I knew he was doing like audio and video stuff.
Right.
So I was just like, "Do you know anyone?" And he said, "Actually, I know these two guys." And obviously
we
only
were
one
trying to
was
do
here.
the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how we connected.
Yeah. If you ever want the detailed version of that, there's probably a little more to it, but
No,
that's
it.
Oh, that's it.
That's it.
Well, it meant
Nothing
a lot more
else.
to me than Daniel.
That's true. I've been trying to tell you this for a long. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, no, it was an interesting way to meet, and I've never. That's why I guess I was saying we should do it one day because I don't think I've ever told you how like terrified I was to meet you.
Really?
Yeah, we'll save it. We'll do it another time.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Now that changes the game for me. I'm like, yeah, I want to talk about this now. So yeah, we'll do it at a different episode.
But yeah, so I guess I'll ask you first. What made you fall in love with stories?
Well, it was more books than it was movies back then.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
For to me, I guess it wouldn't. Maybe for everyone, some people just hate reading. But
well, that's the funny thing is I actually hated reading.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we would have been a little different back then. I was a huge book nerd.
Well, my parents tell me that the school I was going to, they started using reading as a punishment. So they would make you read when you disobeyed. They'd put you in a corner and make you read.
Wow.
And my mom said it was around that time when I started hating reading.
That's crazy.
So I don't remember that being a thing, but maybe that's why I hated it. Yeah, it was really dumb.
That's wild.
Like if you're being bad, then make you go in a corner and read. It's like, I don't know how they think that's supposed to promote reading. But
Man, or stop bad behavior.
Yeah, I know because I read a lot.
Fair.
So yeah, I hated reading. I don't remember exactly why I hated reading, but there was a handful of books that got me so good that I just couldn't put them down. And I remember those better than I remember a lot of the movies that I saw when I was little. Well, some of them. There were a handful of them, but believe it or not, hardly any of them. I don't think any of them were fantasy. I wasn't into fantasy until the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and the only reason I was into those was because my brother was real into that. So he was the one he got me into all that stuff. If it wasn't for my brother, I would have never gotten into fantasy. And I really loved the Lord of the Rings movies, but that was around it came out in 2003? Fellowship?
I thought the first one was like 01. I'll Google
Oh,
it.
you might be right.
But
So,
I mean,
yeah, I was still
same
pretty
era.
little, 3rd grade, something like that.
Right.
But Holes, that book, That was one that really got me into
01,
storytelling.
by the way.
Okay, 01.
Yeah. For the Fellowship. 01.
Yeah, so I guess I could count that. I didn't read the books that when I was that little, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy when I was in elementary school, I mean, yeah, that really was a huge factor in me liking stories.
Let's pause for a quick second. I want to hone in on it. So let's talk about Holes.
Okay.
I read Holes.
Yeah.
So what around like what age, what grade? I mean, we're talking like elementary school, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean,
somewhere between 3rd and 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a young kid, because Holes that's an intense story.
Yeah.
Like as an adult looking back on it, I'm a little shocked at like how marketed it was to like a very, like, it's not even YA. It's like for kids.
Yeah.
I don't consider elementary school YA. I consider like high, like 7th or 8th grade and up. Like even 6th grade is still a little like you're just getting out of elementary school, you know?
Yeah.
Like
it used to be considered elementary school too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
My parents, when they were growing up, 6th grade was still elementary school.
Oh, okay. That makes perfect sense. So like to me, YA is more for like when you're actually starting to touch your teen years.
Yeah.
And Holes, it's intense. So as a young kid, reading that for the first, had you seen the movie or did you read it?
No, I read it way before the movie came out.
Okay.
I remember
did
because
too.
we went to the theater to see a different movie, and I saw a banner for Holes, and I was like, they're making a movie about holes! And then my dad was like, Daniel, chill out, you know? So he said, go read.
You know your punishment.
Yeah.
So do you remember anything about that experience of like
reading it?
Yeah. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, let's talk through that because I think that's super interesting. We both read that in elementary school before the movie.
Yeah.
And it's one that sticks out for both of us because I think it should. That's a dark one a little bit.
It is dark.
So
but it's got a really good, I mean, it's so well written.
It really, so for me, like one thing that always appealed to me and like sticks out in my mind, I've only read that book that one time. I really would love to reread it actually, but I've only read it that one time. I was like a complete nerd about the
yellow spotted lizards.
No, that would have been more like Titus's alley. Is it anagrams when the letters are like
flipped all, yeah, Yelnats.
Yeah, Stanley Yelnats, and it had all these different meanings throughout the book.
Hold on, what? I didn't catch any of this.
Oh yeah, like if you changed the letters, it was different things that came up in the book.
What?
Yeah.
How could I have missed
I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive.
What else did it mean?
Or am I thinking that it was an oh, I just hit the mic.
How dare you?
What's it called when it's the palindrome?
I don't know any of these terms. So
palindrome is where a word is the same forwards and backwards.
Okay, yeah. I knew about that.
I could be wrong. Again, I've only read it but whatever it was about the name, it could have been that it was a palindrome or that it's an anagram.
It 100% was that. I don't know if it was also an anagram, but
and I don't even know if anagram is the right word there, but all I know is I loved that. Like that, I don't know why, but like that little detail, I'm a word nerd too. So like that was really cool that they came up, that the author came up with a unique, little device to make you remember the name.
Yeah.
But I love that, and I loved the relationships that he forms at the camp.
Yeah.
Like you remembered. Again, I've only read it once. I've probably seen the movie a couple times, but like that's been years. And I remember Zero, Caveman. I think that's all I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember those names. Wasn't there a kid with like crazy big glasses or something? X-ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, the characterization was really good.
Yeah.
What stood out to you? Like, what still stands out to you about that book?
I remember just like it was the first time where I was vividly picturing what was happening in my mind. I don't know if it was the way that he described it or something, but I was actually seeing the things in my mind that he was talking about, and it was doing something to me emotionally because One of the scenes I remember reading when I was that little is when he finally finds Zero, because Zero runs away.
Right.
And then he steals I was so upset when he stole the water truck and then he drove it into a hole. I was like, no, because I did not see that coming. I was like, the water truck, that's a genius idea. And then anyway, so he finally goes and finds Zero. And the way that Louis Sachar described how Zero looked when he found him was like this super malnourished, about to die kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember feeling like, oh, like it just hit me. Like I just had this image in my head, which the only thing the movie did not do justice was the visuals. And even that wasn't bad. It just,
I was gonna say, what do you mean?
like like I said, it's not like it was bad. I'm not saying that they did a bad job with the visuals, but it's just first off, anytime you make a movie out of a book, somebody's going to be disappointed because we all picture it differently in our own minds.
That's true.
But to me, the descriptions, like Zero, when Stanley found him in holes, he didn't really look that bad. He didn't look like how it was described in the book. He just looked kind of tired.
I will say though, it's probably they probably did that because I don't remember how it was in the book, but I know in the movie they played it like he was only gone for like a day or so. And don't get me wrong, it would have been dangerous because it's a desert.
Yeah.
But I mean, he wouldn't look malnourished. I mean, he would probably just die of dehydration before he would of malnourishment.
Well, he looked dehydrated in the book. Like,
oh, okay.
It was like crackling skin and stuff. It looked like I always pictured in my head as like a rotten pumpkin. Like that's what his head looked like to me.
Fair enough.
But I also remember reading the scene where the warden slaps Mr. Sir with the rattlesnake venom in her nails, and just freaking out at that, being like, she did what? Like stuff like that was hitting me for the first time in that book in those kind of ways where I don't really feel like I ever had that experience reading before.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first books that got me hooked on like storytelling in general.
That's a really good one, and I had actually forgotten about that. I mean, like I said, I remember it now. Like it stands out as soon as it's brought up. That's why I wanted to touch on that, because I think that's a fantastic one to look back on and latch onto. For me, one of the first ones that comes to mind was the Boxcar Children.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah, I loved those books. That was another series I never got to finish reading because my school didn't have them all, or I could never get my hands on the next one. And I was a very OCD reader from a fairly early age. But I loved it just felt free. Like I always had these like little daydreams about like me and my friends like being just out in the world and like how would we survive. They found a way. Like if I remember correctly, in the first book, when they find the little abandoned boxcar, they like go get a couple things of like glass bottles of milk, and they like keep them cold, like at least cool, by like tucking them behind a rock where a little river is. And like just these little details and stuff like still stick out to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and the oldest brother kind of goes to the little thing in the woods and meets the people that live in the house right there and starts doing little things to earn money from them. And it was just really cool as a kid to like read about other kids that went through whatever they went through. I don't remember why their parents aren't in the picture. I don't know if they died or what, but, and like making a way through it, to survive and really thrive, I guess, for what they're going through. But for me, I guess setting was really what stuck out for me. They're just like picturing being in the forest in the little boxcar, like, and I guess again, relationships. I'm a big character reader. If I can't get behind the character or characters, and I mean that in a positive and negative way. I mean, I'm okay with hating a character, but I need to feel something. And that's why I was saying Holes did a really good job of that too. Boxcar Kids, just that family bond of those siblings, like that was really cool. And kind of the same thing, characterization is what leads me to another one you and I were talking about, which was the series of Unfortunate Events.
I was Yeah.
which phenomenal characterization.
Yeah.
Just knowing it just being ingrained in my mind, Violet tying her hair up, Sonny biting stuff, and Klaus just being a genius.
Yeah.
And an iconic literary villain
Yeah.
in Count Olaf.
I was going to say, when you were talking about I need to hate a character, that was the first character I remember reading about that I hated.
Yeah.
I just hated him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the worst.
Yeah. Him and Poe. I hated Poe.
Oh, yeah. For different reasons, but yeah.
So stupid and
I know.
just ignorant. So, again, because we both read it and that was a big one on our list, let's talk about that for a minute. Those books to me are so impressive because they're so weird.
Yeah.
They're so weird and niche. You can tell the author, I forget his real name, Daniel something, but yeah. But for all intents and purposes, Lemony Snicket. You can tell he is such kind of like me, like a word nerd. He does all these things where the Baudelaires in this moment felt morose, which is a word that here means, and like, you know, that's so cool. It's so different. And it was really broadening your vocabulary when you read it. And for the age range that it's kind of, you know, again, marketed to. And yet again, another book or series of books that were very dark for the age range that they're really meant for.
I actually don't like them anymore because of how the series ended.
Okay. Spoilers, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how it ends.
You never watched the Netflix?
Never finished it. And I've never read all the books.
You know how you say the ending can destroy something for you?
Yeah.
It's got to be the worst ending to a series in the history of the universe. So
that's bold.
Now, I didn't even finish reading the series, partly because I grew out of it. Like, those books weren't as easy to get into when I was older.
Okay.
And I think it's because I missed how dark they were and how depressing they were. Like, when I was little, like, it just kind of went by me. But I always read it as like a gimmick, which it kind of was.
It was.
Because he in the back of the book, he does the opposite of what you're supposed to do. But when you're supposed to tell someone why you would want to read this book, but Lemony Snicket it's a letter to you saying, don't open this book.
Don't bring this up.
Yeah, it's just going to make your life miserable.
Yeah.
Which is a really clever way to...
It's genius.
Yeah, it's so good.
I remember reading that and being like, all right, challenge accepted.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's ruin this life, this 8-year-old life of mine.
Yeah. Same thing for me here. But then the older I got, when I looked back at him, I was like, there really is just no hope in these stories, is there? But I thought it was like leading toward the end, you know, where it was finally all going to work out. And it does and it doesn't. And the setups, like there was no payoff for all the setups that the whole series spent. Now, this is coming from someone who finished the series, the Netflix series. Right. I didn't finish reading the books, but I actually looked up book reviews after watching the series to see if people were as mad as I was, and they were, about the book series.
Okay.
So, like, all the stuff that they build up was like, they're finally going to reveal what's in this thing and what's this. It just ended up being, and it got super, super, very obvious, vivid imagery of like, being anti-Bible. So a little spoiler here. Just there's a scene in the end on an island when Klaus and Violet are dying, and a serpent with an apple shows up, and they eat it, and it saves their life.
Oh,
it's like,
wow, that's subtle.
Yeah, I know. It was like, I was like, what's so weird is it came out of left field. It's like the rest of the series isn't like that at all, other than the fact that it's like sad and...
Well, yeah, I know, but the thing I was going to say about it, and I wanted to let you roll with it, but I was going to counter with, that's, I think, part of what makes it so unique is that it is a very sad story, but that's, to me, one thing that was so impressive about how it was written, and especially in the Netflix show, what I did watch of it, they did such a good job at the right time. They would pepper in these moments of levity. Like, it's like they remind you that, like, okay, look, yes, their situation is pretty bleak, but it's mostly because they're young and they don't have responsibility of themselves. It's not, they are in danger somewhat, but it doesn't ever feel like they're in crazy danger because they portray all the adults as idiots.
That's another thing I don't like about that
Really?
that show or the series.
Normally
I missed
don't.
it when I was little, but I didn't like it.
Normally I don't, but I will say that in that one I like it because it kind of makes me feel like, well, they could get out of just about anything because these guys are stupid enough to always leave a way for them to get out. In general, yeah, I don't love the idea that we're preaching to kids that adults are dummies.
Yeah.
But like in that series, I think it works because of the story that's being told.
Sure, it serves the story.
Right.
I mean, I'll totally concede to that, but I just, on an ethical purpose, I don't like that message. And then the way they ended it with like the serpent was the only one who saved them.
Yeah.
So all the adults are going to let you down.
Yeah.
Listen to the serpent. Like that's essentially the message. It's like super. Like I said, if it had been more subtle, it might have been like, all right, well, I don't like that.
I can overlook it. Yeah. I can pretend that's not what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so blatant and like just came out of left field. I was like, what?
That can't be how the books end.
Well, I don't remember how exactly what scenes happened in the book, but all the reviews I saw had very similar like ideas about it. They were like, I don't think I remember reading a review about the whole serpent thing, but like the other things that disappointed me, like everyone else was disappointed in those on the
story
book
wise.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So I guess safe to say you won't be reading those to Evangeline.
No. Oh yeah, definitely not.
Are there any books that you read as a kid that you think like hold up enough to where you're like, I'm gonna read these to my daughter?
Probably Holes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the dark aspect of Series of Unfortunate Events as much as it is the disappointment and kind of the failure of payoff, and in the show how they handled some of the imagery.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have no reason to believe the imagery is any different than the books, but other than I guess I could look it up, but yeah, I mean, the message that all adults are stupid is one of the biggest reasons why I don't necessarily think I want to read in that. And then the way it ends, like I could look past some things, but Narnia, that's a series I'm gonna read to her. I love Narnia. I didn't read Narnia when I was a kid, actually.
Really?
So that doesn't count for like stories that got me into storytelling. Although I did see the movie when it came out, but I think I was in high school at that point, so I don't know if it could really count. But I loved the movie.
So I actually didn't watch. Well, I did watch the first one. I didn't watch any of the other Narnia movies. I watched the first one because my fifth grade teacher was actually reading us that first book as the movie, I think, was coming out. The first movie came out in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So were you in high school by then? Because I was in fifth grade.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't in high school. I was in high school at 2007 was the first year.
Oh, okay. So you were in like seventh.
Yeah, I was in middle school.
Yeah.
So maybe that counts. But yeah, that got me really into it. I think, dabbled in the books, but I wasn't into the books when I was little. At that point, also, in middle school especially, I hated reading. So I just didn't want to read anything.
So when did you... do you still hate reading?
Sometimes. I mean, I have a hard... Sometimes it's hard. That's why I said I drop books. Like, it's easier for me to DNF them because if it's like... It takes so much. And if I'm not into the story, I don't want to do that to myself. Yeah. So I do read a lot still. I mean, if it's a good book, I'm reading a series right now that I'm really into.
Okay.
It's called The Five Kingdoms by Brandon Mull. So wish I would have read it when I was little, but it's so good.
Okay. Fair enough.
The world, like it's one of the things I've been looking for, which is a unique idea for fantasy, because I'm a little bit tired of just like there's a dragon and there's magic and there's this and there's that. He kind of he puts a unique spin on it that I really like.
Right. This probably almost feels like an obvious kind of thing, but I mean, I feel like there's probably plenty of people who this wouldn't be the case. But for you, did your tastes change as you like grew up, or have you always kind of been locked on to like a certain genre.
Fundamentally, no. But genres, yes. Like, for instance, Mission Impossible 2 came out when I was really, really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think the first one came out before I was even born, or at least right after I was born. And then the second one came out when I was little, and I remember watching it and loving it. And so now that one's my least favorite in the series now. I'll say that, but I still like it. So I still loved action movies, but like fundamentally, the things that I loved about stories has never changed. But I've kind of veered a little bit. I've grown to like fantasy more the older I get. I was into like action, and when I was little, I was into action and like sports movies. I still love sports movies, like feel good. The Rookie, actually, that movie with Dennis Quaid. It's about Jimmy Morris.
Mm-hmm.
Have you never seen The Rookie?
I don't think so.
Dude, that's a great movie. That we watched
I'm
that
not
movie.
big on sports movies.
Really?
Surprisingly.
Wow.
I mean, I've seen some, and I like some of the ones I've seen. I guess I'm just not big on like a feel good kind of movie for the most part, which is
that's
weird.
like my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, I don't know how to say. Like, I mean, I don't like a movie that leaves me like, well, that sucked. This is awful. I hate. Like, I mean, I don't like that. But I mean, just a movie whose like whole purpose is just to be a feel good story. I guess I could be in a mood for it, but like that's not something I'm normally gonna reach for. If I'm in that kind of mood, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna pick like a comedy before a feel good.
Interesting.
Because to me, a comedy is a feel good. Like there's obstacles in it, but even the downs are supposed to be funny. So
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I love like it depends on what you mean by feel good though, because like I would consider The Pursuit of Happiness to be a feel good movie, even though for 90% of the movie you feel like crap.
I guess that's my point. Like to me, a feel good movie, like that title, little nod to series of unfortunate events here. That name. Feel good movie to me is almost like a misnomer. Like it's most feel good movies only feel good because the whole movie has been awful and sad and emotional, and then at the end it like all gets tied up perfect and it makes you feel good that it ended positive. And I'm like, I don't want to sit through an hour and a half of misery to get 15 minutes of, oh, it worked out though. Like I'd rather sit through like something that's going to make me laugh even through the hard moments, or like an action film that's like going to get my adrenaline going. And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, he's going to face adversity, but it's like your blood's pumping the whole time kind of thing.
That's so interesting to me because I love that feeling in feel good movies where it's because you know they're going to overcome it. And it's like, there's just this longing, like you want to see the guy win. And I love that. I love cheering for someone who is just pushing, and even though all hope seems lost. And well, what about, I guess it's not technically the same thing. I was going to say Spider-Man Homecoming when we were talking about this before about how like the building is on him and he's like hopeless and he's like, come on. And he's like terrified.
Right.
That's one of both of our favorite scenes in that movie because you know he's going to overcome it, but he's going to have to become who he's supposed to be to overcome this. That's what feel-good movies are to me.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is like, I don't hate that element. I just don't want to watch a home movie like that. Like Homecoming it is not in its entirety a feel-good, you know, it's really more of like a teen flick action film.
Oh, it's not a teen flick. It's an action film.
It's
not a teen. Like there's no like drama. I mean, there's like maybe a little bit of drama.
The whole,
but there's
who are we
like,
gonna take to homecoming dance? And oh, Liz likes you. She doesn't like you.
Dang it, dude, you're right. I don't want to. I don't want it to be a teen flick.
I mean, it's unique.
I guess so.
That's what helps it stand out from the other Spider-Man franchises.
But it at least did it in a not super cheesy way.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean. You know, it's like most people would hear someone say like rom-com and they would immediately probably think something negative because they're typically, as a whole, like society views them as like lesser for some reason.
I don't know. I love rom-coms.
I love a good rom-com.
Yeah.
I told you, I'm a huge proponent of The Notebook. I love that movie.
That's not a rom-com. That's a tragedy.
There's funny moments in The
Notebook. That
Notebook.
doesn't make it a rom-com. Rom-coms have happy endings.
it does have a happy ending.
No, it doesn't. They both die. She's got dementia.
Together, though. I mean,
but she's got dementia, and like he's like trying to, and they at the last second they finally. It leaves you sad. It doesn't leave you going like, oh, it worked out, yay.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't consider The Notebook a rom-com at all.
I've always viewed The Notebook as having a happy ending.
Well, okay, it depends on what you mean by happy. I mean,
to me, the sad part was through the whole like middle when she can't remember, like she's struggling to remember, and you're figuring out, oh, he's telling their story, and like the scenes in the past of like him fighting through adversity to just be with her, and all the like just near misses of them like not making it work out, and then in the present day her not remembering it. That to me is the sad part. The happy part is at the end she kind of unlocks it for a second and she's kind of lucid and they have that moment, and then she forgets again, and then he kind of breaks rules to go and like lay down with her, and obviously by the end of it, you know, the next morning when everyone wakes up and they realize, oh, they both passed away together. It's like, yeah, it's sad that they died, but I mean, the whole idea to me is that you really got to see their whole life because you heard this story and you've seen them in the past and the present. She's not doing well, so I mean, you know, it's kind of like oh man, like, and then you see like the birds fly over. It's, I don't know, to me it was meant to feel like freeing, like she's no longer dealing with this.
You got a weird sense of free.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
No, you're right. I'm just messing with you. But yeah, I still wouldn't consider it a rom-com. I mean, that movie is supposed to rip your heart out. Like,
yeah, I guess rom-com is a little, yeah, it's a stretch.
Like
but
a rom-com would be like
how to lose a guy in 10 days.
Yeah. Or like What Happens in Vegas. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, dude. That's a funny rom-com with Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz. Do you know the gist of it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, man. So they they are these two strangers who are having it rough, and then they both go to Vegas to just clear their minds. They get drunk and they get married, and then the next morning, I'm just setting up Act 1 for you, but there's a minor spoiler. But the next morning they get in a fight because they're like awkwardly like, all right, how do we deal with this? Because we're married now. And then they get in a fight over each other, and then they put a coin in the slot machine as just like a whatever, and they win like $5 million. So then it's like, who gets the money? Because they're a married couple, so they should both get it. And so the judge, they're trying to figure out the divorce and who's going to get the money. And then the judge sentences them to having 6 months of marriage to try to work the marriage out because he's like fed up with them. They're acting like children. He's like, you guys need to make this marriage work is what you need to try and do. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it's a really good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty good. See, you don't see a lot of stuff like that anymore.
No, you really don't. Yeah.
I don't know what's gone on with movie writing in the last decade or so, but I'm sure it has peaks and valleys. I'm sure just like everything else, but hopefully we're heading back to a peak because I want some variety in the theater again. I think we've had that conversation before, but anyway,
what just happened?
I moved.
Oh, I guess it was the rubber in your chair. Something went.
Oh, you could hear it on the mic. Oh, okay.
I couldn't really hear it on the mic, so there probably was no need to say it out loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt it in the room. Something shifted. I was like, he's here.
the air moved. So another one for me. So, okay. We talked about like how Holes and Series of Unfortunate Events, Boxcar Children, all that stuff. Like what really appealed to me in those was the characterization and things like that. There was a whole other side of me that got like awakened when I started reading Anthony Horowitz, Maximum Ride, Alex Rider.
Oh.
And I don't remember who wrote the Hardy Boys, but whoever wrote the Hardy Boys, I cannot remember. I didn't
read any of those.
You've never heard of any of those?
No, I've heard of them. I've never read any of them.
Yeah, so Maximum Ride, that might have come second. I think I started Alex Rider first. Alex Rider was amazing. Like, for me, I think I was in I had to be 7th grade because I was at my second middle school. So, and I started there in 7th grade. So, in 7th grade, I just went in the library one day and was looking around for something to read and happened upon that book, the first one in the series, Stormbreaker, I want to say. And the intrigue was the front cover talks about like, oh, he's like a 14-year-old kid and he's living with his uncle, and then his uncle dies and it's really sad. But then when he goes to check out his uncle's car that he crashed and died, it was like riddled with bullet holes. And I was like, that's interesting.
That's your murder mystery lover showing up.
That, and I guess I'm just now, I don't know if you could see the epiphany in my eyes, but I was like, I guess that awakened two things in me, because not only did I love the action of that series, but the mystery is really what got me to read it. But yeah, those books, man, to be around that age, to be like a 13, 14-year-old boy and reading about like a 14, 15-year-old boy traveling around the world with these cool gadgets that this agency makes for him. And he's like, knows these different martial arts because his uncle was like training him up. Because you find out his uncle was like part of MI6. And just, oh my gosh, it was so cool. I fell in love with action stuff. Like I didn't know action could be cool to read until I read those books. And then Maximum Ride was, when I ran out of Alex Rider books, I went to Maximum Ride, and it's about like this group of kids who were like experimented on, and they mixed human DNA with avian DNA. And so these kids have like hollow bones and like they're super regenerative and huge wings that sprout out of their back, and they can fly, and they're like really strong. And they fight these like half human, half wolf creature things called erasers, that like their whole mission is to take out these kids because they escaped from the lab that made them. And those were okay. I actually, with my brother, went back a few years ago and reread.
Is that James Patterson?
You know what? You're right. That's James Patterson.
Okay.
Because I was thinking when I said Horowitz, I know Horowitz did Alex Rider. I was like, I don't think he did Maximum Ride. But yeah, you're right. It was James Patterson. I went back with my brother and read those again, and they did not hold up as well for me later in life. Some of it was still pretty cool, but a lot of the narrative stuff, I was like, man, stuff just happens to happen in these. Like, they're not that good. And then the Hardy Boys, so the funny thing about the Hardy Boys is I actually found those later, like in high school, even though those were probably the oldest books I could have ever read. But they were a lot like the Alex Rider books. I think Horowitz took a lot of inspiration from probably a love of Hardy Boys and created a newer version with Alex Rider. But the Hardy Boys was very cool. Very, very cool.
Interesting.
I'm actually shocked you've never read any of those.
Is it like a adolescent misfit group of boys or something that?
It's two brothers. They're the Hardy brothers, and they go on these different little like missions, and there were like, guns and fighting and stuff involved in them. I want to say the same author who did those also did like the Nancy Drew mysteries. And I'm just going to look it up. But yeah, I never did read the Nancy Drews, which is crazy.
Those are like kid murder mysteries.
Because those are mysteries.
Yeah.
But I never have read any of those. Let's look. Hardy Boys. That was... Yes, I know it was a book series. I love how the internet will just tell you the most obvious...
Dude. Oh, don't get me started. The most irritating thing is when you're trying to find a solution to a problem and you're looking on the internet and every post gives you like the whole history of the thing. They like, in 1893, oil was considered... It's like, just tell me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
So here's something crazy. Little fun fact while I'm looking this up. The Hardy Boys series ran from 1927
Wow.
to 2005 and is comprised of 190 volumes.
That's pretty loud.
Yeah. Like that's loud. I don't know what else to say. And even with all that being said, still can't find the author. So anyway,
What just happened to you is the thing I was just talking about.
oh, well, here's a cover. Franklin W. Dixon. I
Okay.
don't know if that's the same guy who wrote all of them or not.
I've heard that the Hardy Boys is like a really good story for like young boys to read.
Oh, okay. This is why. The books were written by several ghostwriters,
Oh.
most notably Leslie McFarlane, under the collective pseudonym Franklin W. Dixon.
Interesting.
That is cool.
Did you ever read the Magic Treehouse books?
Yes.
I loved those in like second grade.
So, yeah, going back to like really early stuff, Magic Treehouse was cool to me because of like the magical element of like being able to go back to these different eras. So I would pin that up to like setting. I don't really I mean, I know as a brother and sister, but I don't really remember them all that well.
Yeah, me neither. I'm the same way. It was the magical element, the setting and stuff. For some reason, there's only one part I ever remember reading, and that was when they come home after wherever they went, and their mom had made a PB and J's for them, and I just remember thinking like, my mom makes PB and J's for me. That's crazy.
I'm just like these guys.
Yeah. I don't know why that memory sticks in my head.
Yeah, I mean, minds are funny. That reminded me, have you ever, when you were little, did you ever hear of or read any of the A to Z mysteries?
No.
The Jeweled Jaguar, the other ones. There's like a bunch of other ones.
No, I've never even heard of those.
Oh, man. That, I guess, would probably be my first interaction with mystery. Yeah, so I got them right here. Like, basically, it was these kids. Let me go back to the all here.
No.
Okay. It's a popular series of mysteries for children, kind of aimed at grades 2 and 3, ages 7 to 9, written by Ron Roy. And it was basically about these like 3 kids who would just solve little mysteries in their town of something Connecticut. And it was, you know, they're one of those, like how the Junie B. Jones books are like the Magic Tree, like real small, but I don't know, man. Something about those just really hooked me too. I don't know what it is about a mystery. Are you as obsessed with mysteries as me, or is it a me thing?
It's a you thing.
Okay. You don't like them?
I don't dislike them, but I've never been that intrigued with murder. I've always kind of felt like murder mysteries were like the meat and potatoes of storytelling. Like the bread and butter. It's like, it's not really anything that makes me go like, wow, but it's like a good solid, I mean,
well, like, I
can't beat a classic murder mystery, you know?
Right. Like, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's just murder mystery, but like just mystery, like any kind of mysterious intrigue.
Whoa, yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like you can't.
My favorite kind of thing in a story is when something happens and you're like, it's completely mysterious. Like, where did that, actually a movie that did this for Claire and I when we were watching it had a bad ending though. Unfortunately, the whole thing was so good, and the ending was like, "What?" Pardon me. It's called The Adjustment Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it?
Never heard of it.
Okay, we hadn't either. We just saw it on Netflix. It's got Matt Damon and Emily Blunt, and I'll let you watch it if you want to, so I won't spoil anything. But there's just there's these people that are following Matt Damon, and they got like a noir kind of style dress, so you're thinking like, all right, these are like detectives or something, and then they do something like supernatural, almost like they have these like items and stuff, and you're just like, what? And then they start doing these things, and you're like, whoa, what? Hold on. And then from there, it starts going like, you're like, what is going on? That kind of stuff. Like, we were like totally into the story, and then so we got to find out who these people are and what they want with them. That kind of stuff I love. But if you're talking about just the murder mystery genre, I'm not really like a fanboy about that. I mean, I like them. I loved Knives Out and Glass Onion.
Yeah.
But those are really the only two I could think of. Like when I think of murder mystery, I think of like Matlock, and
I've never even heard of that. Or I've heard of it,
really?
but I've never seen it.
Matlock is Andy Griffith. It's after the Andy Griffith show. It's what he did. It's like a murder mystery TV show.
Okay.
There is one, I actually have told you about it before. It's called Longmire. It's like a Western murder mystery TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still on Netflix, but
Okay.
that was actually pretty good. I did like Longmire. I wouldn't watch the series again, but it was pretty entertaining. I guess it goes more back to like the whole. It's like meat and potatoes. It's like
right.
It's.
I mean, and I'm trying to think of like examples. So like, have you heard of the show Severance?
I've heard of it, but I don't know a thing about it.
So, and I guess this one's so fresh on the brain because I just spent the last 2 days re-binging it with my brother because the new season's about to come out. But it's a show on Apple TV, and it is probably my favorite show right now, period. Like, of any show I've ever seen, just because the mystery factor of it is so heavy. Like, they drip feed you little answers, but like they really keep you hooked. The premise is, it's set in just the real modern world, but there is this procedure you can have done, the severance procedure, where they basically drill into your skull and implant a chip that can turn on and like shut off your like a certain part of your memory. So like when you go to work, you're basically a whole different person that all you know is being in your job and what you do at work. And when you leave, all you know is your social life, your friends, your family. You don't know anything about work.
Yeah.
And, it's really intriguing at first because you're like, oh man, that'd be like cool. You feel like you never work. Like that's pretty awesome. But there's like obviously a lot of horrible things that could go wrong with that.
Yeah.
And they do. And the whole like intrigue of the show is you're like trying to figure out what in the world it is that this company even does. Like the main little group of characters, their job is called macro data refinement. And they like scroll through these super ancient looking computers, like very like almost analog looking tech, but they are computers. And they're like, it's just a bunch of numbers on the screen. And they look for groups of numbers that like trigger emotional reactions. And then they divide them in these boxes at the bottom of the screen to like complete a file that they're working on.
That's really interesting.
They don't know a thing about what the numbers are, what they mean. Like they don't know what they're doing. They just know what to do. And it's really crazy because like you get a little glimpse of it in the first episode in that one of the characters throws something heavy at one of the other characters' head. It hits it, kind of like gashes his head. And when he gets out of work, he's got a little like envelope on his windshield. And when he sits in his car and opens it, it says, we just wanted to give you this. You suffered a minor head injury while you were moving a box of paper today. And we wanted to give you this, as like a courtesy, because you got hurt. And he didn't even realize. He's like, oh, like I have a Band-Aid on my head. Like what the heck? And, but that was complete BS. Like that's not what happened. They lied. And that's like your first thing of like, oh, so like they're just totally shady. and it goes on and on from there, and it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and it is such a good show. But there's no murder mystery to it. It's just the mystery of what is going on. And
well, I think every story has to have some element of that.
And that's what I was gonna say. Like I was kind of getting at, but I was like trying to really think and make sure there might be. I mean, a movie you've brought up a couple times on the show, Pursuit of Happiness. I wouldn't say there's any mystery to that, but like it's a great story.
Well, I think there is. Maybe there's not.
I mean, I guess you could maybe argue that like the mystery is like, what's he gonna do? But like, I mean, that's more just like kind of ties into more like the almost hopelessness feel of like where he's at, and like, you know, he's keeps pushing to do something to get to a better place. I wouldn't call that a mystery, but I feel like the Mission Impossibles have mystery in them.
Yeah,
you know, like
that's true.
There's people pulling strings behind the scenes, and you don't know who you can trust. Those have mystery in them.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you there. I mean, that's one of my favorite things in a story. Is
I love that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I was asking. I wasn't trying to like zone it in strictly on like a murder mystery, but just any kind. Like to me, that's like my favorite thing. That you can hook me in almost any kind of story if you've got a good like mystery in there. Like just kind of dangle one bit of information in front of me, but like don't give me the whole answer and like be like, okay, you'll figure it out as you go. That's why Vanilla Sky got me so much. I was just like, when you told me like, well, it's this, but it's really like there's a saying the words to me, there's a big twist, will make me want to watch almost anything. I hate horror films. When I heard that Saw 1 has one of the best plot twists ever, that's why I went and like looked it up, and we talked about it on the last one, because I was like, I have to know. Yeah. I have to know. I didn't want to watch Get Out or Split or any of these like even thrillers.
Yeah.
But because of I heard that they have these cool twist endings, I was like, I have to know what it is.
Yeah.
7 was another one that I
didn't care about that.
Can't watch that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know.
That's fair.
But yeah, so for me, mystery is a big one. And I guess those A to Z mysteries might have been like my first encounter with mystery in storytelling, which is funny because I had forgotten about those until we were kind of gearing up for this discussion. But
so far, I think 100%. This is really interesting to me. 100% of the stories that we have said that really got us hooked into storytelling are novels, but we are more interested in film now than the novels, I think. And I'm wondering if that's. Do you feel like reading is less like there's. This is kind of true for anything when you get older. Like life kind of loses its color a little bit the older you get if you're not careful. I mean, I think to some extent everyone goes through that. But when you're doing things for the first time as a young kid, it feels like world changing. You know, like when I remember, like I can still remember picturing things in my head with holes. And I just remember that feeling. I haven't felt like that reading a book. Even the books that I love to read now, I'm really liking the series that I'm reading now. It doesn't do that to me. Like those kind of things hold a special place in my, in my memory. Do you feel that same way? Like reading is less like movies are more likely to do that to me now. Like Vanilla Sky actually did that to me. Like I just kind of turned it on. And I was like, and I heard that it had some stuff in it that I wanted to watch. So, and I was just like, what is going on? Like with the whole time, I was just like locked in on it. And books, they rarely do that to me. The closest that I've come to that since then is The Name of the Wind. That's the closest that I've come to a book making me feel that way, but it still isn't exactly the same. I'm just curious if you feel the same way.
I think we're the exact opposite on that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So for me, reading a story feels so much more intimate to me than just watching it play out.
I gotta get weird about it. I'm just kidding.
Typically, reading a book, you're gonna get you're going to get a lot more information about the people you're meant to care about. And I mean care about in a good or bad, like even the villains. Like, you're going to get a lot more information than what a movie can usually provide, because there are time restraints, budget restraints. Can the actor portray it the way you want them to? Like, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that goes into taking written word and then putting it in a film. It's its own kind of art form. It is still storytelling. We've talked about some, like, we want to have an episode talking about visual storytelling and some of our favorite bits of visual storytelling. It is its own art, and it is beautiful, and I do love it. I love movies, you know that, but it is usually easier for me to have a, like, oh my gosh, holy crap moment, or like a wow, that hit me right in the heart moment reading something than it is just watching a movie of it.
Man.
So, and it's actually funny you brought that up, because another one I was going to bring up, and I purposely wanted to wait a little bit and have more of a discussion, because I know you won't have much to say on this one, and that's fine. But the Harry Potter books, first of all, I know we read them at very different times in our life, so that's probably part of it. I'm well aware they're not like the best books ever. They're not even my favorite books I've ever read. But
to be fair, I wasn't allowed to read them, but we did start reading them as a class when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually my parents had me go out of the class when they did it, but I wasn't really even into it then, to be fair.
And that's fine. I mean, they might have just not been for you, and you have since, as an older person, gone back and just tried to give them a shot, and I think the movies too.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't get into any of it, and that's completely fine. For me, the experience I had reading those books, even though I had read books before that, like, I was like, I knew I liked to read. Some of the moments in those books were the first times that I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know books could do this. Like, I did not know written word could trigger such like a strong emotional response. I remember getting physical, like, tingles, reading about when he first went into the wand shop, and like how when he got the right wand, how it responded, and the gold and scarlet sparks shot out of it. Like, I pictured that so vividly. I got chills. And I remember being like in 4th or 5th grade and in my room reading the ending of book 4 and legitimately being scared. I had never read a book that made me scared before. And it actually kind of freaked me out, and I put it down for a while and didn't come back to it because it, but
yeah,
I didn't.
It's called witchcraft.
Yeah.
That was not the reading doing that to you.
It wasn't even the magic of it. It was just the hopelessness of him. I guess spoilers for a very old book. But him being alone in the graveyard, and Voldemort came back, and there was no one there to help him. And the other kid, I don't think you had really seen a kid die in any of those books until that one. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is he going to die here? Like, what the heck? Like, it was crazy to me. It was mind blowing, world changing kind of reading. And as I look back, those books, like a lot of the other ones I read at that age, yeah, they don't really hold up. They're not the best books ever. As much as I can't stand to say this, I think honestly some of the best written books ever would be more like the Kingkiller Chronicle. I hate saying that because I don't like giving him the credit for not finishing a trilogy, but those are.
I know we've kind of talked about this before. I really want to do an episode on this, but there's another author named R.R. Verdi who wrote a similar series.
We're going to do, for sure we're going to do that. I got to read them, but I do want to knock those out because I think that'd be a great episode. But like, and that's kind of where I wanted to segue into. I fell out of reading for like years, like a long time. And you actually got me back into reading.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm learning all kinds of things that I did to you that I didn't know.
You had no idea.
Apparently, you were terrified to meet me. I have no idea why.
You're a scary dude. Must be
Dude,
your intimidating
Can
friend.
I do a little sidebar real quick?
Absolutely.
This will be super short, only like 5 hours. But
Cool.
Yeah. There was you've seen. Have you met my brother?
Yeah, once.
Okay, so he's not like scary looking at all. He's like shorter than me.
Yeah, I mean he's not a big dude, but I mean I guess I could see where if I didn't know him. I mean he's got like a.
He's got a big beard. I mean, or he had a big beard when this happened.
When he smiles, he looks nice. But like, yeah, I'm just like I'm intimidated by people anyway.
Okay, well then maybe you're the wrong person to ask.
Yeah,
but
I get afraid of meeting people ever.
Okay, well then that makes the whole thing less interesting to talk about. It's like if you're just afraid of meeting people, that it wasn't.
But I want to hear what you're gonna say. I want to see.
No, I'm talking about when you said you were afraid to meet me. I'm like, it's less interesting now if you're just afraid to meet people in general. But
oh well, I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating. But
yeah.
my point is like, I don't know how else to word it because I don't want to be like, I love your brother. He's really nice. I've only met him the once, but
he's not listening to this. You can say what you want about him.
All right. That guy? No, but like people always said this about like my dad at work, where like he just looks mean.
Really? You think that about my brother?
A little. Like again,
that's
when he
crazy.
Once he kind of like was in the room for a little bit and he was like laughing and I was like, oh, he's like super cool, super chill. But like when I first saw him, I was like, that's your brother? Like I couldn't believe it.
I guess maybe it's just the bald head and the beard combo.
It might be. I don't know. But like, and by the way, it is still interesting because my reason for being scared to meet you was not because like I didn't know what you looked like. But,
but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that makes this a little more understandable from your perspective. But when we were in Texas, we were getting ready to play a show, and the drummer was riding with me, and my brother drove his motorcycle there, and he parked it.
Of course, he has a motorcycle.
He
You see what I mean?
That's he doesn't anymore. I guess that's fair. He doesn't have a motorcycle anymore, but he parked it, and we were walking to meet up with each other, and it's me and the drummer, and this huge guy comes walking up to me and the drummer, and I'm like, because this is in the city, it's like nighttime, we're about to play a show, and I'm like, obviously this guy's gonna. So he comes up and starts talking to us, asking for some change, and we're about to tell him like, no man, we can't. And then my brother just comes strolling up. It's just he's a good bit shorter than me. I think.
Yeah, he's. I wouldn't say maybe like a full head, but I mean he's noticeably shorter than you.
Yeah, and he just comes kind of walking up, all gently, hands in his pocket, and this dude is huge. He's like 6'5" probably. I mean, and big too. And my brother just comes walking up. And he goes, "Hey man, I don't want any trouble." Like my brother didn't say anything, and me and Drew were just like, the drummer, or not the drummer. My brother was the drummer, the bassist. Yeah. Sorry, Drew also plays drums, so that's what confused me. But me and Drew were just like, "What?" And then he just kind of like walked off, and I was like, "Dude, Micah, I'm taking you everywhere with me from now on." That blew my mind.
Yeah, I'm
that
not
dude's
gonna lie.
huge.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
He didn't. Maybe it's just because I grew up with him and I know him. He didn't do
what it is.
I guess so.
It's definitely what it is.
He didn't do or say anything. He just strode.
That's the scary part. Like once he speaks, you're like, oh, he's so chill. Like he is such a nice guy, and that's why I was like, I really don't want to be like mean.
Yeah,
I love meeting him, but like, yeah, when he's just sitting there quietly, and he's like, that's the scary part. Like that's the part where I'm like. Okay, all right,
man. I guess it's just because I grew up with him. Yeah. But Drew thought the same thing. He was like, "Dude, you don't look scary." I mean, I don't know. He just walked up, and the dude's like, "Hey, man, I don't want any trouble." It's like, all right.
Yeah, you better back off.
Do I look that scary too?
No. I mean, I'm trying to think back of like I again. My vision of you is now very different because I know you. So kind of like you with your brother. I think the first time I met you, you remember Ryan's impression of you.
Yeah, but I don't. Well, he just didn't like me, right? He didn't. It's not that he was afraid of me
because he took you so literal the first time he met you. When you were like, he was like, "Can I use your bathroom?" And you just straight face like, "No." And that was the first words you guys ever exchanged. Like, maybe you do have that trait a little bit, also. Like,
I don't mean to.
I will say, when you're serious, like when you're not joking, yeah, I guess it must be like the genes are strong.
I guess so.
Maybe
I've actually heard the same thing about other people in my family. Like
yeah, it might just be a thing that in your like it's your serious face.
I
And
guess
it's
so.
not that you're like trying to be rude. It's just you do have a very different demeanor when you're being serious. Yeah, like that. Like bearing holes right through my
See,
skull.
but I can't keep that face. I'm just gonna laugh. So
Yeah, with me.
do you know what? When I was in San Francisco doing that school thing, one thing that somebody said about me is he said that I'm serious like -12% of the time, but when I am serious, it's the most serious he's ever seen anyone in their entire lives.
I would agree with that. Like that's a very true statement about you. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's very true.
I've noticed it since he said it. I mean, I get what he's saying because I'm usually pretty goofy, but like there are things where I'm just like, "What'd you say? Huh?"
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't ever do that, but you know what I mean.
No, but I mean, for real, like you, and that's what I'm saying. Is like, as soon as your brother spoke, I was like, oh man, okay, now I see that they're like, I could totally tell because he is a lot like you with the kind of humor y'all have and stuff. But yeah, when he didn't, I was like, that's his brother. And honestly, I wish I had thought about it then, but I didn't. I wish I'd kind of tried to think back and be like, was that my first impression of Daniel? But now that we're going to do an episode where I talk about what led up to meeting you and everything leading up to that moment, I might have to like really dig deep, see if I can remember anything.
We'll have to tie it
I have
in.
to talk to Raymond too.
Oh yeah, did he feel the same way?
I don't know. That's I got to ask him.
Interesting. We'll have to tie it in with some kind of story topic, but which I'm sure we can do. Oh, all right.
Nah, we'll figure it out. But yeah, to jump back to what I was saying and more actually story related, you got me back into reading. I had kind of fallen out of it for it'd been years. And I was actually in a really dark place at the time.
Dang.
Bad old relationship, and then the place I was working also, I had no like positivity at the time, and my parents weren't living at home because they were helping take care of my grandfather and stuff. It was a whole thing, and we were hanging out one day, and I forgot why, but we went to Books A Million, and you were like, dude, I've got to show you this book. You've got to read this. And we went over to the sci-fi fantasy wall, which I'll never forget because at the time it was on that left wall, and now it's on the right. And I never went over there because I've never cared about sci-fi or fantasy.
Really?
My whole life to that point, I had never cared.
That's crazy. You struck me as the kind of person who would be. That's why I showed it to you.
Yeah, no.
But you were still into comics and like superhero movies, right?
Yeah, I liked all that. But,
okay.
I didn't. I mean,
and you liked Harry Potter. That's fantasy,
right? But like again, as a kid, I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
And I didn't view that as like it was fantasy. And I know fantasy is kind of a broad term because fantasy could just be anything with any magic in it.
That's true.
And a lot of the like adult fantasy was more like Lord of the Ringsy, and I have never seen, read, or had any interest in the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah. So disappointing.
Yeah, I'm going to watch them for this podcast, and we're going to talk about it. But I had never.
We should do an episode where I watch it with you, and like get your reactions in real time, and we'll just chop it up.
That's a thing that some YouTubers do, like live movie reaction stuff.
Yeah,
we could do that.
Totally.
That'd be cool. But yeah, it really threw me off because I was like, we were walking over there, and I was like, oh God, how am I gonna tell him no? Like I wanted to be nice about it, but you were.
And then I just put my serious face on, and you were like, okay, I'll read it.
Please don't get your brother on me.
I don't want any trouble, man.
But like, you were so excited, and I was like, you know what? I mean, I'll get it. So I bought it that day. I don't know if you remember that. I walked out of the store with the book that day, and it did take me a while to read it.
That's so funny to me because I thought that I had just introduced you into something that you would be excited about. That you would have been like, oh yeah, dude, like I love stuff like that. I'll read that. I had no idea that I had just completely rocked your world.
Oh yeah. 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 You did because, like I said, not only was it a genre I never would have went looking in, but also on top of that, I was not reading at the time. And what ended up happening was that re-sparked my love of reading in a way I did not think would ever happen again. Because, I mean, first of all, again, credit where it's due. Rothfuss wrote 2 really good books. They're beautiful. They're poetic. They hurt, and they also can make you laugh, and they also can make you like just smile. Like they're just, there's a lot in those books. And when I started reading The Name of the Wind, I will always remember where I got hooked, because honestly, even getting into it was rough. The first few chapters when he's just in Noir and he's at the inn and he's Coat and he's, you don't really know much about him. I was like, Daniel, what do you have me reading?
Oh man, I was hooked from the start. Like I was so into that.
I didn't, but you got to understand, you liked fantasy stuff. I had
that's
no
true.
frame of reference for what I had just gotten dropped into.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the whole first was it a prologue or whatever where he's talking about the 3 silences and all that. I was like, what? Like, what does that mean? What is this?
Oh my gosh. I had no idea this was your initial reaction.
Oh man, yeah.
I'm sitting there like at my house thinking like, boy, that first chapter's gonna get him so good. That prologue like wrecked me. I was like,
you want to know what got me? When he finally sits down with Chronicler and he's trying to figure out where to start the story, and he tries all these different ways. Well, first of all, I thought it was really cool that he tests him.
Yeah.
And he gives him all these, he just starts making like sounds and just to see how he writes. And then he figures out his writing system just like that, which was pretty cool. But then on top of that, when he gets the introduction that he wants, which is basically the little blurb on the back of the book. And again, mystery.
Yeah.
I've done this. I've done that. I've done this. Here's how. Well, now I want to know how.
Yeah.
I want to know how all that happened.
I was gonna guess that the Scrael is what got you hooked.
I didn't understand that was a mythical creature until I finished the book and maybe even the second one, and then maybe went back to reread it and then was like, oh, like this wasn't like an animal attack or something. Like in my mind, again, I knew this was fantasy or like fiction or whatever. I was just like, oh, well, like they're getting attacked by these things. I didn't realize it wasn't normal. Like it came from a world they weren't. That's why everyone was freaking out. I was like, oh, maybe they just think this thing's like possessed because it's like attacking them or something. I don't know. When I went back and read, I was like, oh, the Fey realm's like almost mythic for them, like it is for us. Like it's not real. Like so they're freaking out. But now it made sense. Yeah, there was a lot that I did not pick up on.
Well, but I felt the same way when I first read it. I thought this is just a part of the world. But because I know fantasy, I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting creature that's in their world. I want to figure out more about this world. Because that's one of the most exciting things about fantasy, at least high fantasy for me, is like figuring out how the world is different from ours and what the rules are. And like, ooh, I want to learn about what this creature is and how it affects. So just stuff where they like insert stuff in normal conversation that's not normal to us, but it's normal to them in their world. Like that's what I thought the Scrael was, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I want to know what these little spider thingies are,
Right? Yeah, no, I was lost. The thing that got me
now you're found.
Was him. Yeah, was him telling the chronicler that, and after that it hooked me. And you were talking about you were asking me. Kind of what led me to tell this little story was you were asking about can reading still do that, or is it more just about being a kid and kind of experiencing some of these storytelling techniques and things for the first time. Kvothe sitting in the woods alone after his family is murdered, everyone he knows and loves is gone. I'm trying not to be too much of a baby right now. Playing the lute.
Yeah.
And he's broken like half the strings, and he feels like he can't do justice to the songs he knows. So he just starts making up songs like the leaves rustling on the ground, but in a song. The wind going through the trees, but it's a song. Like that passage of him describing that broke me when I read it.
Dang.
In book 2, the scene where he's with the troops, or when the king sends him to go do the thing, he's got his little group with him, and they're coming back, and they run into the huge group of bandits, and they're basically about to die, and then he just like goes ham.
That is the coolest part in that whole book.
I'm getting chills thinking about it. I haven't read that scene in probably 4 or 5 years minimum. Just talking about it, like, I would say yes. Reading to this day, The Right Thing can just blow my mind.
Well, I mean, I did say that the closest I've come to that is The Name of the Wind.
That's true. I'll give you another example that's not that. Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. I've only read the first book, The Blade itself.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, the whole book is really good. I mean, it's just a really solid book, and I can't wait. I'm going to finish that trilogy this year, actually. But the second to last chapter in that book, which, in case you're ever interested, I won't ruin it, but I don't think I've ever read an action scene written like that in my life. It just, the narration of it blew my mind.
Man, maybe I'll have to check it out.
So it can be done.
Can I add something to your little Name of the Wind spiel there?
Yeah.
A lot of people have a problem with The Name of the Wind. They say that Kvothe doesn't have any flaws. That's like one of the big issues people who don't like the book have with it. And I actually, I remember talking about people online, I think it was on Reddit, about this, where I disagreed with that completely.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have a flawed view of what character flaws are, for one. But they say that he's just so good at everything. He's the best lute player. He's the best at sympathy magic. He's the best this, the best that. His only flaw is that he's broke, but he always ends up finding the money somehow. That scene, that the whole series between when, so there's 2 reasons I disagree, and one of them is that the part from when his parents are taken, and everyone he knows and loves is gone, to the where he's in Trebon and he's getting beat up by those bullies. I mean, this is not that's a flawed character. And I've brought that up, and people are like, well, that's being really harsh on him. I mean, who wouldn't be that way when their parents died? I'm like, yeah, but that's the point, is he's human. That's what
Right.
Flaws are supposed to make you feel, like they are human. They aren't perfect. Of course, like anybody would be tragic, but a character without flaws would just brush that off their shoulder and be like, parents died, no big deal. Here I go to save the day.
Right.
He has to learn how to grow and deal with that pain before he can become who he is, and he's got to overcome it.
And really, I would argue he hasn't even done that, because
Yeah.
I think he just kind of found a way to lock it away.
Well, that's actually the second part that I was going to say, that I think why I disagree with that statement is, usually the way 3-act stories work is the hero at the third act, before the last battle, they come to the black moment, which is where all hope is lost, and they have to learn how to overcome their flaw if they're going to defeat the villain. And that's when they move on to the plan, which is to fight the villain. The story in book 1 starts in the third act because he's Coat. He's obviously done something that has wrecked his whole life.
Yeah.
That's wrecked the whole world. And so he's in that spot. We're given a hint into that at the very beginning. So I think that's kind of dumb. And part of the reason he seems so awesome at all this stuff is because he's telling a legend. It's supposed to have some kind of embellishment to it. That's the whole. Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's part of what makes it such an interesting story, is like, he's so good at all this stuff. How did he end up as this kind of loser innkeeper?
Right.
Who can, what I hope, we're probably never going to hear this because the third book's probably never going to come out. But what I'm hoping we'll conclude with is something like, we'll catch up midway, or at least 3/4 of the way through the third book with present time. And then that's going to be the moment where he's going to have to overcome something and rescue everyone from the Fey realm.
Right.
most people don't think that's going to happen, and I tend to agree with him because just knowing Rothfuss, like the little I know about him, I think he's setting it up for a huge tragedy, and it's just going to be like hopeless at the end, which I'm not like I would be really disappointed. But I think that's if the third I guess that's the best thing about the third book never coming out is I don't have to be disappointed in that aspect.
That's true. For all you know, it could end very happy.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you think of Dinah? Do you hate her?
I this is another flaw too, by the way. Kavoth's obsession with Dinah. It's like, dude, like that's being like she's obviously stringing you along. Yeah, of course I don't like Dinah, but I like Kavoth even less than when it comes to Dinah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
sorry.
Not in general.
No, not in general. Like,
but in those situations,
yeah,
you put a lion's share of the blame on Kavoth.
Oh, almost 100% of it.
Okay.
It's like the only reason she's doing any of this to you is because you're going along with it.
He's such a simp.
Yeah, I know.
No, I
mean, I get it though because a lot of like I was like that in high school too when it came to. I mean, he's.
Well, yeah. I don't know. We could probably go on and on about it. We're going to have to do a King Killer episode. We're going to have to. I just feel like even with everything you just said, there's so much more we could talk about there.
That's very true.
We'll have to add that on the list too. But yeah, I mean, all that to say, the right books, the right stories can still evoke that in me. And movies too. We haven't really talked about a lot of movies. And like you said, a lot of your list, because of how early we're going, was going to be books. But it's funny. I told you earlier I had a different angle on it that I didn't think you were necessarily going to see coming, and I'm going to shoehorn it in here.
Oh boy.
I think one of the first things that got me hooked on any kind of stories was my dad telling stories.
Really? That's crazy that you said that, because I was going to think to ask you if you've ever had like a vocal storytelling experience where someone just tells it to you.
So some of my fondest memories are sitting with like my entire family, like even like extended family, at like holiday functions or just going over to visit or whatever. And them, as I got older, somewhat letting me, sit with the adults at the table instead of going to play with the kids, and just getting to hear stories about like what's going on in everyone's life. And then like hearing my dad, recant these stories of things that I already knew, like that we had been going through or that had happened or whatever. And then hearing him tell these stories, because what I noticed was like a well-told story gets a reaction unlike anything else.
That's true.
Unlike anything else. You've done stand-up comedy. That's probably the closest you could come to that feeling of just like, but the thing with a story is like a story can get you that reaction laughing. It could get like a a room gasp, or it could get, anger. You could evoke anger. I mean, you could do it with any emotion. Like it doesn't always have to end funny. And my dad has always been really, really good at that because he's so detailed. Sometimes he's a little too detailed, and we tell him, we're like, hey, get to the point. But I do that too. I tell stories just like my dad, which is why I often worry that I ramble on this podcast.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
No, I probably do 100%.
I mean, both of it. That's kind of the point of it.
We're
just talking about stuff we love.
No, I know, but when I listen back, I'm like, God, is Daniel even there? Did he leave? Am I just like, I always.
There's times where I go on rants too.
I hope.
You want me to start talking?
Yeah,
I won't stop for another 2 hours.
But like that to me, more than even probably books or movies. Well, not even more than, but I think my love of books and movies came from the fact of I was like, oh, I'm going to gather all these. I can tell these later.
Yeah,
and I do. What we're doing right now is talking about books we've read, movies we've watched, and telling those stories. Because not only do you get to tell the story that is the book or movie and talk about it, but you get a whole story about your experience with it. Me telling you about you dragging me to Books A Million and telling me about this book. And that was a story for you. Like you said, you had no idea of any of that. Like
Yeah.
that, my experience with it and your experience with it is what got me to read it. Like
Yeah.
that was a story. So I think that was really actually my first love of it, was hearing my dad tell stories about like just craziness and like talking about having kids and blah, blah, blah. And to my other family members, and then hearing them do the same and just the reactions it got and whatever. Cause nothing evokes those reactions like family.
That's true.
I mean, that's some of the strongest feelings you're going to ever have. And I, to this day, that's like my favorite thing to do around the holidays, is just get together with family and listen to old stories, new stories. I have many locked away that I'll always just bring one out and tell people if the right moment's there, and they always get the reaction because they're good stories. They're really, really good stories.
Yeah.
I don't think you can tell a better story than a real organic one that happened, because sometimes, they say truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Sometimes things that really happened, it just blows people's mind that this isn't a movie. It's not a book. That really happened.
Yeah. That's very true.
So for me, that's actually probably what really actually got me hooked on every kind of storytelling that we tackle on this podcast.
I think in indirectly, at least, that's probably true for everybody to some extent, because like, I mean, I think the reason we can relate to fictional stories is because we know of we've had experience with stories that have actually happened with people who have
Right.
Do you know what this maybe could be a whole episode on its own, but the best games with stories. I don't know how much you said you're not really much of a gamer, so maybe that might not. I don't know how much content we could have for that, but there are some games that have such good stories that they might not have been the first things that got me hooked into stories, but they definitely added fuel to the fire.
Right.
And one of those games was Halo, the first Halo.
Really?
Oh yeah, that the storyline.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Would not have guessed that.
It was such a fun game. It was like groundbreaking when it came out. Everyone loved Halo.
That I knew.
Yeah, but the storyline was actually really interesting and really good. I still remember the scene. I wish I could remember exactly how the story plays out, but I just remember there's the scene where you're like on the alien spaceship or something, and then the general is just basically like, guys, we just, you discover that the aliens have like a bad plan or something, and he's basically like giving a speech. It's like, this is it for all of us. Like, we need to win this thing now or go home. And there's something about being the character in the story when you're playing the game, and like you're having to like move your character through situations that and you're like figuring it out as you go. That's really cool too.
I mean, I've definitely had some good gaming experiences story-wise. I mean, when I got my PlayStation 1, that's like I was probably in first or second grade. That Spider-Man game that came out for PlayStation 1 had a great story.
Yeah.
Where you were being framed for stealing Otto Octavius's new invention, and Eddie, you ran into Eddie Brock there, and so Venom's after you, but you're being framed by like Mysterio, and it's a whole thing. And there's all like, I loved that. Fast forward, I didn't really have anything to play on my Xbox 360 when I got it in like 9th or 10th grade. And I ended up, a buddy of mine let me borrow Assassin's Creed 2, and my OCD kicked in, and I didn't play it for a long time because I was like, I'm not going to understand it. I never played the first one. And then finally he was like, look, dude, you don't need to, just play it. Just play it. And I fell in. That was one of the first games like I ever beat all the way through on that system, because the story was so cool, and just the mechanics of playing that game. It was the first like open world game I had ever played, and it was,
yeah.
I've never played The Last of Us, but I've heard the story of The Last of Us is like a really, really, really good story. So I agree with you. I mean, I think there's plenty of games that people would argue have as good of stories, as a novel or a movie. I don't know if I could comment on many of them, but
yeah. Well, that could be a fun thing, is like finding the best storylines and games and then playing them and then talking about it.
That'd be cool.
But there's two of them in particular now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I have a huge list because I'm not a huge gamer, but
Right.
I like there were a handful of games I played that had really good stories, and the two of them that I think have the best storylines. Halo has a special place in my heart because I was so young, and that was like it was such a huge thing when it was
Right.
out. But Red Dead Redemption and
Right. I've heard of that.
you've never played it?
Mm-mm.
That the gameplay is just super fun in that one, but the story is like really really good, and it's like the cool thing is that it doesn't end when you think it does. Like you think the game is over, but then you do like a little side quest because there's no more main quest, and then you ended up being like the credits roll, and you're like, oh, that's the end of the story. So
That's
it's
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. But then the other one was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
That was one for me.
Yeah, with a storyline.
Yeah.
Dude, the part where you're in space, like it just transitions you to space and you just see the missile.
Yeah.
That was one part where I was like, "Oh, snap."
Yeah.
Like
the betrayal.
Oh yeah.
You get murdered in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a really cool. That one was extremely controversial. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
The airport mission?
And I was not thrilled about that mission either. Like
I'm actually surprised. I think there was an option where you didn't have to do it. I'm surprised you did it. Just knowing you, I just feel like
I don't remember if there was an option.
Well, I think like now I will say I don't know how early you got the game. Like by the time I got it, because those games always used to come out in like the fall, and my mom was not big on me playing shooter games. So
was she little on it?
Yeah, she was very little on me playing shooter games. And so what I would do is every year at Christmas, I would always get like just enough money to go get it. And that's what I would spend it. I would get the new Call of Duty every year with my Christmas money. So everyone had already had the games for a little bit by the time I got them. And all I remember is by the time I got that game, they had a thing like where when you booted it up for the first time, a window would pop up and tell you like, hey, there's a specific mission, and it can be, I don't know if they used the word triggering or whatever, but like they basically warned you, and they were like, do you want it included or not? And you could basically have it where it skipped it.
Well, for one, I was a different person back then. Probably I was just more intrigued than anything else, and I was like,
yeah, I mean, I left it in because I knew about it already. My buddy had the game, and I heard people talking about it. Like I knew it was really controversial, and I left it in. And I mean, I don't think it like made me evil, but it was weird. It was a weird experience, and like you said, it was probably just more young intrigue rather than anything. But anyway,
I mean, I don't like that they did that because I remember you're in it, you're like, oh, this is terrible. I wouldn't even agree because the idea is you have to like pretend you're undercover,
right?
But I've always hated that premise, and like there's been some shows where they've done that. There was a scene in particular in 24 where I was really angry that they did it. Where you're undercover, so you have to hold your cover, you have to do what they want you to do. The whole reason you're undercover is to protect people. So like if you're gonna let people, just innocent people, die, that defeats the purpose of being undercover in the first place, you know? So it's I've never really liked that whole idea, and I would say, I mean, it's totally I just kind of, I remember hating that scene and then just moving on and pretended like it didn't happen because I liked the rest of the story. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that one was definitely one that I beat that one all the way through too.
Yeah.
I could probably count on like one or two hands how many games I've ever beaten all the way through. Like I've never been one of those people who has to play a game to its end.
What about Elder Scrolls? You ever play any of those?
None of them. I might have tried Skyrim once or twice, but I could not get into it. Again, I hated the fantasy stuff.
Dude, oh man.
Dragons and all that. I hated it.
That for one, that blows my mind. But for two, it doesn't, because
because that game sucked.
No, Skyrim was amazing. Are you kidding me? I don't play it now because I've got like it's got some stuff in it that I disagree with now. But
dragons.
No, I don't mind dragons. You don't like dragons?
I mean, I don't hate them, but
do you like How to Train Your Dragon?
I actually do like those movies.
Those movies are so good.
Yeah.
I love those movies. Anyways. I was gonna say the reason it technically doesn't blow my mind is because like I already mentioned before, my brother was the main reason I got into any fantasy stuff. He was the one who bought all the Elder Scrolls games, but the Morrowind game, the first, well, it was technically the third Elder Scrolls because there were some kind of computer games before, but the first one that came out on like a console, that one had like a map with it that you could go explore. It was like the first real kind of game like that, and there was a really intriguing storyline, and it was the first time where you had like this RPG where you had to like be thoughtful about the kind of weapons that you used and the kind of stats you wanted to increase because you wanted to build a certain type of character. And that was like really, I don't really even remember the story that much in Morrowind. I don't remember anything about the story actually. I just remember loving it, partially because of the gameplay. But dude, to say you couldn't get into Skyrim, that is wild to me.
I could not.
Man.
I didn't like the gameplay. I didn't understand anything about what was happening in the story. I was just like, all my friends loved it. Matter of fact, that's why one of my buddies was like, you have to try it. So he let me borrow his because I didn't want to buy it. I didn't even want to buy a used copy. I just was like, nah. And he's like, you have to try it. So he let me borrow his, and I had it for maybe a month or two, and I every now and then I would try and pop it in and give it a shot. I just could not get into it.
Well, the reason probably is because you're coming at it with like having no knowledge about how those games work, because they're very specific kind of games.
Yeah, that's
like,
probably true too.
You have to, because I was that way with Skyrim at first too, and Morrowind. Like I said, I had my brother who he was really into that stuff, so he kind of showed me how to like take advantage of that stuff, and how to actually make a character build for and then it gets really fun because you start realizing how you have to play it.
Right.
But I could totally see, if you don't know anything about those games and like what you're supposed to do, there's not a lot of help in the game to get it. So like I could completely understand being overwhelmed and being like, I don't understand the gameplay. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. He's just swinging a sword like this. That's really boring and annoying. Like I could completely see why that would be a letdown. But maybe one day we'll have to play it and I'll have to show you why you're wrong.
Maybe. We'll see. That, like you said, that'd be an interesting...
We're coming up on time, just so you know.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting episode maybe. But yeah, I mean, so for me, like I said, man, I could look back and say, you know, all these movies really sparked... Because, I mean, I went through different times in my life, you know, as I'm sure you did too. It's just like... When I was a little kid, which is funny, you hated reading. It makes sense with the backstory you gave, but I loved it, and then I fell out of love with it, and then I found, you know, like the Alex Rider books that kind of sparked it back up in middle school, and then I fell out of it again, and then I don't recall reading almost anything in high school, like at all.
Oh, I forgot to mention. We're talking about story. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
No, you're
but
good.
I got to mention this before this episode's over. The House of the Scorpion, and which was probably the last book that I read before high school. Well, it was between freshman and sophomore year. And oh man, there was one more. But yeah, The House of the Scorpion. I think that was the last book I ever read that did to me what I was talking about before with Holes.
Right.
Fantastic book.
Yeah, that one was like I read that one in middle school as well and fell in love with it. That I never read the sequel. You said you read the sequel. I never read the sequel.
I have it if you want to read it.
I probably just need to reread the first one, but
that's fair.
Yeah, I'll probably check them out. But I don't think did you read anything in high school really? I mean, other than like assigned.
The Hunger Games. I read that in high school.
Never read those.
It's not worth it. They're good. I was really into it. Like I was turning the page, but especially the older I got, the more I didn't really care for them.
Yeah. Never got into those. Yeah, I don't really think I read anything in high school. I mean, I started reading some comics in high school, but that's about it.
That counts as reading. I mean, you're reading the dialogue.
I guess it depends on what you want to. I'll put it like this. Yeah, you could make that argument. I mean, it is a story. It is a version of storytelling.
Oh yeah,
I'm definitely 100% on board with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit here and act like comic books, as much as I love them, I will not be the person who says, or reading a comic's the same thing as reading a novel.
Well, I didn't say it was the same thing as reading a novel,
But that's
but
what I'm saying.
it is reading.
When I say I didn't read anything in high school, I meant like books, like books.
But do you think listening to a book is the same thing as reading it? Because I would argue, well, I don't know if I would argue this, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but it's an interesting question. Does it take more brain power to read a graphic novel or to listen to an audio book, like a fiction book?
I don't know about brain power. I mean, so here's my thing. I've actually had this discussion with like people in my book club and like my wife and stuff like that. I was very much against audiobooks and e-readers.
Yeah.
For the longest time. I was like, I was very adamant. You just go get the book and hold it. Like, just hold the book. Like, that's part of the experience of reading.
Yeah.
Turning the page, seeing your progress, smelling the ink and the printed paper. Like, that is part of
That's a little weird.
Reading.
No, I'm just kidding.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I just had this image of you going,
oh, yeah. Every page. You got to see what the new one smells like. Nah,
I know what you mean. I'm just joking around.
But I mean, that to me, like, going and either checking it out of the library or buying the book and cracking it up, like, that is part of reading.
Yeah.
And then I started the book club, and my wife was like, hey, books are expensive. And also, we don't have infinite room in this house. Are you really going to buy every book for this book club? What if you don't like some of them? Like, you're not picking every book. Like, what if you don't like it? You're just going to have it taking up room here, and you're going to spend money on it. And so I invested in a Kindle e-reader, and I'm not going to lie, I have fallen in love with it.
That same thing happened to me.
I love that it's light. I can hold it anywhere I go. I got the little one. I can tuck it in my pocket.
Yep.
The light adjusts, and it doesn't hurt my eyes because it's not a phone screen.
Yeah.
It's the paper back or whatever.
It feels like a page.
Like and it doesn't feel like a screen. Like, I love everything about it. Now, I still will
not
switch.
A sponsor.
Not a sponsor. I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'll take it. But no, I mean, yeah, it's not sponsored or anything. I fell in love with it. Just out of the convenience of it, and they're cheaper. Like, ebooks you pay a lot up front for the device, but then an ebook, and they go on crazy sales. Like,
yeah,
you can load up on ebooks a lot cheaper. It's crazy how expensive physical books are. Now, if I know I'm going to like a book, or if it's an author that, like, for example, we've talked about, or I've told you about Dungeon Crawler Carl. Matt Denneman's like story and like everything about how this came to be was like crazy to me. And though I had already purchased some of them on the e-reader and on Audible because I love those audiobooks, he's doing a release of the series now in physical, like in hardback, because now he has enough money and like notoriety from this series to where he can justify putting them in bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's really meant to like catch the attention of people who just might not have known about it. But I now own them in hardback. First of all, he added some extra stuff, which I wanted to read. And second of all, I was like, I'm going to support him and get these books in hardback. So I will still buy physical books, and I still read physical books. But I work in a tire plant, and it is nasty in there, and you bring books there, and eventually they start to get dingy and dinged up, and they smell like rubber and everything. And
yeah.
So for me, having the Kindle, something I can just toss in my book bag and like bring it to work, not worry about it. I have a case and all this stuff, and and then I can just keep my books nice and neat at the house. And when I'm at home, I can crack it open and pick up where I left off.
Give it a nice smell.
So as far as give it a nice. As far as audiobooks, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I've had that argument, and I've argued it both ways just to see, like, would it change my mind. For the longest time, I used to say no. It is completely different. You're not reading a book if you listen to it. That was my first stance, and I was hard on that stance. I have actually grown to appreciate audiobooks for the convenience of them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just think certain narrators just do a knockout job of reading the book, and it just is a whole different experience.
Yeah.
So what I came to like settle on was, at the end of the day, whether you read it physically or with an e-reader or whatever, or you listen to it, you're getting the same story. I will say I think it is easier to tune out an audiobook on accident, and so you might miss certain things, I think. But at the same time, there are times you can listen to an audiobook that you couldn't read the book. So as long as you get the same story, I don't think it's like that big a deal, but I do think it uses different parts of your brain. And because of that one reason, I say that, I still would prefer to read it, but I'm not above an audiobook. Where do you stand on that? Since you asked, I'm just curious.
Well, I was just asking, do you think it takes more brain power? I was just curious. I mean, I don't really have a hard stance either way. I used to think that it was like cheating to listen to an audiobook for like school, because I was like trying to educate myself, but I don't think it's cheating anymore. Actually, when you think about it, audiobooks are more like the most ancient form of storytelling.
Well, that's actually what I was going to bring up, because I was talking about like my dad telling stories and stuff. I mean, really, like you said earlier, like oral storytelling was, I mean, that was the thing for the longest time. Before TVs, people would gather around a radio and listen to like stories on the radio and stuff.
That's actually War of the Worlds, how it became a thing. It was a radio hoax.
Really?
Did you not know that? Have you never listened to the original War of the Worlds radio?
No.
People were freaking out. It was like in the 50s. Someone was coming on the news and saying like, there's this thing, it's a tripod, it's shooting people. People were like freaking out about it.
Oh my gosh.
I learned that in elementary school. Like
I did not know that.
Yeah. You should look it up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
But I think we're all out of time for today. So
Sounds good.
Stop talking. No,
Okay.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just joking around.
No, yeah. I think that was a good little trip down memory lane.
It was.
And insightful for, instead of just telling people, hey, this is why we're doing this, I just thought this would be a good idea of like really talking about what got us into the story so much that it would make us want to do a whole show about it.
Yeah.
And I think it gave us some good ideas of things to tackle for future episodes. So the list is ever growing, but as always, we thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, for those who watched on YouTube this time and last time, a little different setup. This is probably going to continue to grow and change, hopefully, as we can come up with more and better ways to do this and bring it to you. But like I said earlier, the goal is to continue to do it and maybe move into doing it full time eventually. So we will continue to improve it for you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, whether it be on Spotify or YouTube, or are we on the iTunes podcast? I forgot to ask you.
Yeah, Apple Podcast.
And or the Apple podcast app as well. Wherever you can get podcasts is, I guess, where we're at.
And on that note, wherever you're listening, whether Spotify or Apple or whatever, if you like what you hear, try to leave us a review, because it really helps. It helps the system send it to other people who might like this as well. Share with your friends and family. If you're on YouTube or Spotify, leave us a comment. We'd love to talk to you. Hear your thoughts. What are some stories that got you into storytelling in the first place?
Right. And also, again, the email, if you have any longer form things, thoughts you want to send, or also
hate mail.
Or hate mail to send for topic ideas or anything, is
storytimewithchrisandDaniel@gmail.com.
Right. So please feel free to reach out in any way that you can and let us know what you think, how you feel. Let us know what got you into storytelling. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you like it as well. So, let us know what got you into stories. What are some of your favorite books and movies from your childhood? And yeah, with that being said, until next time.
Oh, I hate cliffhangers. We did it.